All right, welcome to part two. So we're going to start off talking about a balanced diet. I'm not going to read out the different nutrients and what they're required for in the body, because all I will be doing is reading exactly what's in that PDF revision guide for you guys. What I am going to point out to you is that it's not enough to just be able to say vitamins and minerals. There are some specific vitamins and some specific minerals that you need to know what the body uses them for. So the vitamins are A, C and D, and the minerals are calcium and iron. It's all explained, it's all really straightforward in that table on the balanced diet page in the revision guides. So I just want to highlight to you that that is something that you do need to know. All right. Now we talk about a balanced diet all of the time. What a balanced diet actually means is the essential nutrients you need in the right proportions. So eating the right foods that your body actually needs in the right amounts. So lots of people are like, oh, I have a zero fat diet, or they cut out carbs or something like this in an attempt to kind of lose weight or be more healthy. Actually, your body needs all of those nutrients. Your body needs carbs, lipids, proteins, vitamins, minerals, water, and some dietary fibre in order to function properly. So it's not about cutting them out, it's about having them in the right amount. All right. The energy requirements vary in different people. So there are sort of rough guidelines for the amount of calories, because that's where we get our energy from, that we should consume. They have recommendations for men and women, but actually your personal energy requirement will vary. Depending on various different things, and at various points in kind of our life cycle we might require different calorie intakes. So something that could change the amount of energy you need is your activity level. So if you're really active in terms of exercising or playing sports and things like that, you're obviously going to need a lot more energy than someone who doesn't take part in any of those things. Age can be a factor, so sort of children and teenagers typically require more energy than older people because they're still growing, so they need that additional energy to support their growth. And similarly with pregnancy, pregnant women require more energy than non-pregnant women for the same kind of reason. They require the additional energy to help support the growth of the fetus. All right, so you need to be able to tell me what the different nutrients are that we need. Know some examples of food that you might find them in, because that could be a question that comes up, and you need to know what their function in the body is. Now, we can't talk about digestion without talking about enzymes. Okay, so as I said to you in the first video when we were talking about biological molecules, our body can't absorb those big molecules, the starch, the proteins, the fats, etc. They're too big to pass through the walls of the digestive system. They're insoluble. So if they were just to be left as those molecules on that size, as they kind of went through our digestive system, our body wouldn't be able to do anything with them. So instead, we have to break down those big molecules into the smaller ones, like sugars, amino acids, glycerols and fatty acids, so like those subunits that we spoke about in that first video. And because they're smaller, they are soluble, so they can pass through the walls of the digestive system into the blood to kind of be taken around to all the different cells in our body that need them. So the enzymes you need to be aware of, so you need to know their names, what they break down, so the substrate, and what they break it down into, so what is produced. So really quite simply, amylase converts starch into maltose, and maltase converts maltose into glucose. Okay, so maltose itself is still actually a little bit big. We can break it down even further. So you've got amylase, starch to maltose, maltose to glucose. Proteases converts proteins into amino acids. There'll be different examples of proteases. Protease is a general name for an enzyme that breaks down a protein, but it's fine just to know a protease does that. And again, lipases is a general name for an enzyme that would break down a lipid into a glycerol and fatty acids. There will be specific examples, but for you guys to know that a lipase does that is absolutely fine. Okay, so amylase, maltase, proteases, lipases. Those are the examples you need to have in your mind. All right, so this brings us on to our last couple of examples, and that is the alimentary canal and digestion. I'm actually just going to quickly flick back. In our lesson on Wednesday, we went over enzymes, okay? Enzymes and digestion is a really nicely linked question. They might talk about, ask you to identify that, enzymes that do this in the digestive system. So, name the enzyme that breaks protein into amino acids, and then they might link that. and start asking you about, okay, what might happen if this enzyme was put in the wrong pH, or what might happen if this enzyme was put in too high a temperature? What is an enzyme? What are factors that affect an enzyme? How could we test, enzyme activity? So whilst enzymes and digestion is kind of quite, a single page that we've gone over quite quickly, you guys need to have the background knowledge of what an enzyme is. Don't think of them as two separate topics. Right, so back to our alimentary canal. So the alimentary canal, i.e. the path that the food takes. All right. Again, I don't really want to sit and read this out to you because it is there in the revision guide, and there isn't really much more to add to it. What you need to be able to do is label the parts. So, if you were given a diagram similar to the one in the revision guide, could you label all the different organs? And you need to be able to tell me what they do. All right. But the path generally that your food takes, it goes into your mouth, obviously down your esophagus, into your stomach, and it then is going to go through the small intestine, large intestine, and then rectum, and obviously any waste products is pooed out. It's worth noting that you need to be aware of some of the other organs and how they contribute. So the liver, for example, and the pancreas, for example, and the gallbladder. The food doesn't actually go into those parts. Please don't think that you've got food swirling around in your liver. You don't. It's just those organs kind of help support what the alimentary canal is doing. Okay, because they produce enzymes or bile, etc., to help with digestion. Okay, you do need to be able to pick them out, but it's just to make clear your food isn't going into those organs. All right. So if we have a little bit more on digestion, so these are kind of the specifics of the digestive system, how the digestive system or the alimentary canal is adapted to its function. Again, these are really common questions that come up all the time. So the first thing to know is what bile actually does. So bile is produced in the liver and it's stored in the gallbladder. So made in the liver, stored in the gallbladder, and the gallbladder will release it into the small intestine. Now, before food goes into the small intestine, it's been in the stomach. And as you guys know, stomach contains stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, so it's going to have a really acidic or low pH. Okay, but this pH is actually too acidic, it's too low for the enzymes in the small intestine to work properly. So if that, we call it chyme, the mixture of acid and food from the stomach, if that was to pass, as it is, into the small intestine, the acidity of it would completely denature the enzymes in the small intestine. So what that would mean is you wouldn't get the digestion going on there, that enzymatic digestion in the small intestine. So this is where bile comes in. It helps to neutralise the acid and it makes the condition more alkaline. Okay, so it raises that pH because you've neutralised the stomach acid. And this means that the enzymes in the small intestine are able to work better because they actually work best in these alkaline conditions. So as kind of the big heading on the revision guide page says, is, bile neutralises the stomach acid. Its second function is it emulsifies fats, okay? I think in our in-class mock that we did, just before kind of school closed down, we had a question about this. All right, and we talked about what emulsification actually is and what it means. So it takes those fatty acids or those fats and it puts them into smaller tiny droplets. So this gives a bigger surface area of fat for the enzyme lipase to actually work on. So instead of having one big giant kind of fat droplet that the enzyme takes ages to break through, bile emulsifies it, it breaks it down into little smaller droplets, bigger surface area, lipase can work more quickly, digestion happens more quickly. All right, so bile emulsifies fat, neutralises stomach acid. The next thing to kind of be aware of in terms of, specialisation of the digestive system is this process called peristalsis. Loads of you have written about this in questions before. We just need to make sure we actually know what it is. So there's muscular tissue all the way down the alimentary canal. So think, through your esophagus, through into your stomach, through your intestines, there are muscular tissues there. So muscles capable of contraction. And this is exactly what peristalsis is. It's this squeezing action which appears in waves. Okay, so the whole tract or canal doesn't all squeeze together at the same time because that obviously wouldn't help. It does it, section by section by section, as you can kind of see in that diagram. In your revision guide pages. Okay, you can see it's contracting in little bits. And that contraction, that wave of contraction, helps to move the bolus, or the ball of food, through your gut. Otherwise, it would get clogged up and it wouldn't move anywhere. So the food wouldn't naturally just kind of pass through. We need this contraction, we need this peristalsis to actually make it move through. And then lastly, again, you guys will know that the small intestine has villi in it, and this helps with absorption. So this is the way that the small intestine is adapted for absorption of digested food. It has a really, really big surface area. So this is how these villi help. They increase the surface area for absorption. So there's not just, one or two of them, or even, 100 or 1,000. There's millions of them. And then within the villus, there's also microvilli. So these are kind of projections on the villi themselves, which again help to further increase the surface area as well. Villi are also kind of help with adaptation, or are a part of the adaptation for digestion, because they have a single permeable surface layer of cells. So that means that the digested products can kind of diffuse in very quickly, and they have with a really good blood supply as well. So villi help to increase surface area, and then the villi themselves have these adaptations of microvilli, so even more surface area, a thin cell wall, and not really a thin cell wall, because that's not technically correct, but a short diffusion distance, because they've got a thin surface, and they have a really, really good blood supply. Okay, so that is everything for human nutrition. As I said to you, this really is just kind of the bare basics of the content. You guys need to go away and have a practice of some exam questions. You kind of need to have a bit of a think about how could you take this information that I've given you here and turn it, kind of apply it and use it. All right, but that is human digestion part 2. So you're done with human digestion.